So about 15 years ago, after doing all this research, or 10 years ago maybe, after doing all this research on Aboriginal relations with land and investigating concepts of home and place and people's sense of belonging, I've tried to take up those questions, those issues that arose with the Aboriginal studies, and ask those questions of the wider society. And in the Gulf country, that means white fellas, non-Aboriginal people, some of whom have families that go back a long way. It means people of Chinese and Afghan ancestry, as well as Aboriginal and European ancestry. And so our current work is doing sort of comparative studies of the feelings for land and sense of place across those different populations. The Chinese men sort of got together with Aboriginal women a lot of the time.
That's right.
Because at the time there was only Chinese men coming up from Kantar, no women, right?
I would say so. Some of the women may have come, I'm not sure. But
we don't know any.
We don't know. Most of them come just for the gold. That's all I could fathom out.
Just like the Ballarat miners come for the gold.
Yeah.
Same thing.
But how did that happen, that they got together, you know, like the Aboriginal girls and the women?
Mainly on stations, when they were on stations, when they were doing the gardens, the Aboriginal women were there.
The men used to go
and the men used
cook and do
cooking
gardening.
So the women were there doing the housework or just working around the station.
Do you think that were they sort of getting together with Chinese men more so than with white fellows, with Europeans, or?
At that time, I'd say they were.
Yes. Because you have to realise in them times, the Aboriginal people and the Chinese people were very inferior people. And, you know, it wasn't good for white women to, you know, be with Chinese men too.
But I guess my question is, do you think people now who, in this Gulf country, who've got Chinese grandfathers or great-grandfathers, how do they think about that? Do they value that Chinese heritage, or do they think it's too far back?
Most, I think, don't value it at all. They've sort of moved on to the Aboriginal side of their own Aboriginal. But
well, me, in my way of thinking, what do you mean for myself?
Yeah.
I sort of value both cultures, you know, from the Aboriginal and Chinese. So it's interesting.
Yeah. There's Phyllis there.
I just like to know where I come from and who. I would have loved to know those people. You know what I mean? The old people, because they live different to us. But so the oldest one was my grandmother, so I just got most of the information from her.
But is there also information about your Aboriginal heritage that you didn't know, or that you?
Yeah, because of my grandmother, she had an Aboriginal mother and a Chinese father, so she was the only one that I could talk to.
When I first bought the hotel in 1984, there were no Aboriginals in the district at all. None at all.
And just standing back, I suppose the big picture question is, would you say, how do you compare the sense of belonging and home between white fellas who've been in the Gulf for a long time, such as yourself, and black fellas who've also been here probably for some, you know, most of their lives around and whatever, you know, their families at Dumaji and so on. Do you think it's much the same, the sense of place and belonging, or different?
No. I think culturally it has to be different.
Yeah.
And that isn't a criticism against one party or the other. It just means it's equal but different.
Sure.
It's I have a very strong feeling towards this place because I spent the majority of the last 30 years here.
Yeah.
I was up in the Gulf a lot when we first bought the hotel, looking after it for months at a time, or you know, other people were having holidays and things like that. And then I've been here 17 years, sort of non-stop this time. I have a big feeling of home. I feel very much for the graziers that go back, you know, 100 years or so, which live in this country.
And then what year was it that this Floraville was taken up?
As far as
By your family?
by family, yeah. Well, actually, purchased an interesting tale behind that as well. But in '63 and moved in '64.
Right.
But of course, when the family moved in from the territory, 3 Aboriginal families moved in with us.
From the territory?
From the territory, yeah. And some of them helped drove the seed stockings from the territory, property on the territory.
So they would have been sort of on the Calvert Hills?
Yeah, that's right.
Area.
Yeah. Joe Clark, Morris Jadford, and Callie George.
Yep. Yep.
And so I say I had a luxury, I suppose, in the sense that I grew up with a number of children from those families.
Yep. So from what you say, I mean, there's no question. If your answer to the question we ask everybody, where is home?
Oh, well, where is home, I suppose. Well, here is home. But you could probably broaden that out to more the Gulf home, I suppose, yeah. You wouldn't have to... Yeah, certainly the deepest root is here, but it spreads out to the Gulf area.
So a pretty strong sense of belonging in the Gulf country.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't think you realise what connection you have to those type of areas until you go away for hopefully a break, and the first week is fantastic, second week's not too bad, the third week you break your neck and come back home again.
It's important for social scientists and anthropologists to take a balanced approach to research when they're asked to do this and when they're doing academic research, and if I could put it this way, to be cautious about imposing their own personal political positions or beliefs, in that they're not the ones who are living in the region, they're not the ones living with the problems which need to be solved, and they shouldn't assume that too easily that they're going to have Aboriginal people agree with their position, whether in favour or against mining. I think anthropology has a great contribution to make in a post-settler society like Australia to just focus on this question for people. I'm not quite convinced when we've interviewed people across the society, different people, if we ask where is home for you or where do you have a sense of belonging, if they say, oh, nowhere really, I don't really know, it's not important, I'm never convinced by them, because in other aspects of the conversation, with a very little prompting, they then do start to talk about the places where they feel at home.
You've been engaged here since '78.
Yeah.
Where do you belong?
Well, I think I have a degree of belonging in the Gulf country. I think Aboriginal people in particular have, because of this, I call it generosity, social generosity, to include and encompass people, even when you fight with them and even when you have disputes with them, and I've certainly had that, as well as all the easy relationships and relationships of affection and so on. But I don't refer to myself as an Aboriginal person or a Wanyu person or a Gungalita person, or using any of the regional identities. I don't believe that is so. I'm an Australian whose greatest sense of belonging is in the southeast Queensland region, in the city of Brisbane that I grew up in, although I lived for 20 years in the city of Perth, where my 4 grandparents spent some time in their early adult years, having been migrants into the country. My sense of personal belonging is between Brisbane, Perth and the Gulf country, with different kinds of belonging in and different kinds of sense of place in each of those locations.